Hey, Risky Business listeners, Derek Ogden here. I'd like to introduce Gavin Garbutt. Gavin is the co-founder and chairman of Augmentt. He was also previously a co-founder and former CEO of Enable. For our listeners who don't know who those companies are, because you might not be in the IT field, these are the guys who make sure that your data is safe at Enable. And now at Augmentt, these are the guys who basically secure and make sure that your software as a service applications are secure and remain secure. And they help guys like us enforce certain security measures with their discover, engage, and secure features on their Augmentt support, Augmentt platform, to make sure that you don't become a victim of business theft. So we brought Gavin in today to talk a little bit about what some of the breakdowns are between the MSP providers, which are the guys who provide our services to us and work with us to help secure our small businesses. And that breakdown in communication, it kind of comes down where we understand what Augmentt does. We know why it's important for small businesses, but sometimes as IT guys, we have a really hard time kind of portraying that to our small business customers and explaining why. So that's what we want to talk about today. And with that, Gavin, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Derek, thanks very much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here and to be able to speak to you and with your audience.
So I know that one of your life missions is to help guys like us secure cloud services and SaaS. And SaaS is software as a service. So one of your missions is to help guys like me secure our small business customers' SaaS applications. And I wanted to talk a little bit about, what can we do as IT service providers to help our small businesses understand, what is the result of this? One of the things that we've started to talk about is, instead of talking about cybercrime, we've talked a lot more, or data theft or data breaches. We've talked about it in the context of business theft, right? The modern business in 2023 is built on lists. It's built on the list of your customers. So when that list gets taken from you and used for evil, and now you have to pay out all this money to notify all the people on that list, and now instead of your customers working for you, that customer list is working against you, that's business theft. So what is it that we can do with products like Augmentt and even Enable too, to help protect us and protect our small businesses from that?
Well, Derek, what I find fascinating is, yes, my mission is to help MSPs help their customers. And what I really care about at the end of the day is, how do we help the small and medium-sized businesses and small and medium-sized enterprises be better managed and more secure? So back in 2000, I started this company called Enable, which is now a $400 million a year company, and that was all about managing and securing the devices, and that was great. But as we all know, when COVID hit, everybody split the office and went to work from home and started adopting all these cloud applications. And so the number of applications in the last few years has increased 700%. So all of a sudden, the network became less of the issue. It was more about the applications that people were downloading and using and putting corporate data into. And not for malicious reasons, but just to do their jobs more effectively. And it could be a marketing tool, it could be a finance tool, it could be a sales tool, a quoting tool, you name it. But all of a sudden, these companies got all of these SaaS applications, and some of them could be on-prem, like desktop-based applications, but most of them are now cloud-based applications. And the companies don't understand who's using what applications. So it's no longer like the devices and the network is still important, and that needs to be secured back in the office. But people are using the cloud applications wherever they are in the world, whether they're working in the office part-time, whole-time, doing some work at home, on holidays, whatever. The data that they're using is mostly in the cloud. And the small and medium-sized businesses do not have the tools to proactively monitor or manage or secure the applications and the data that's in that application. So as an example, Microsoft did a recent study, and they did it on 1.6 million M365 Microsoft accounts on 3 different continents, and they found that over 80% of those accounts did not have 4 of the key services, security services, enabled properly. So that would be multi-factor authentication. It's like when you do your banking, you always get a multi-factor thing to approve that this is actually you. So that kind of stuff at the IT level, 80% of them are not done. Passwords are not updated properly, user logins, etc. And Microsoft literally has 1.2 million breaches every single month. And they have told everybody that if you just do multi-factor authentication, MFA, on your Microsoft account, 99% of those breaches would not have happened. So the problem is that and Microsoft is a cloud application now for most users. If the policies are not set up and they're not proactively monitored and not able to be configured in real time, then bad actors are going to get in because the number of threats are just increasing exponentially. And we're seeing that in cybersecurity insurance premiums doubling year over year because the number of issues and claims are doubling year over year. And a lot of people can't even get cybersecurity insurance. And when you have a breach at that level, 80% of businesses, small businesses, do not recover from that breach. So, this is the way to communicate this effectively to your audience, to these small and medium-sized businesses, is very simple. You leverage the Augmentt tool to do a security audit and threat report, which doesn't take terribly long, and you can see exactly how strong or weak the security policies are, where the breakdowns are within the organization, what employees are doing things they shouldn't be doing or don't have the right policy set up and it needs to be improved. Where are the threats coming from? What do we need to do to block those threats? These are now with the tools that you have that did not exist 2 years ago for SaaS security and SaaS management. You can now easily go to all of your customers and all of the prospects, anybody listening out here who has not had an audit recently should have an audit of their security policies and security posture, so they understand where they have weaknesses and how you can protect that. And it's not terribly complicated, and it's just a premium security monthly service that allows people like Derek Group to proactively monitor and configure and manage and report on those policies on an ongoing basis so that you can feel much more secure that the probability of something happening is much less, and that if something does happen, there's a process in place to mitigate the risk. Because it's not saying nobody can guarantee that nobody's going to get breached, because that's going to keep happening as the bad guys keep getting smarter. But it's mitigating the probability and then having a plan to mitigate the risk if it does happen.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the problems with the multi-factor authentication is the inconveniences that it causes for certain small businesses in certain situations. So we actually, one of my companies, we had an experience with it's a $10 million a year company. It's not a super small business, but they have their, accounting department and, about 15 employees in the office and then, 100, 150 employees out on the road. So they had a situation where they had, their accounting department was using QuickBooks, trying to send out invoices through email. And the QuickBooks has this kind of hokey thing on desktops where, on the desktop version of QuickBooks, where it doesn't want to send out emails. It won't work with multi-factor authentication. So, they're head of the accounting office went on and basically said, I'm going to Google this and try to figure out what to do with it, right? And one of the forums told her, and this is somebody who wasn't one of our IT clients or cybersecurity, but one of the forums that they read said, well, just turn off multi-factor authentication and then QuickBooks will work and send your emails. And that's what she did. She fixed the problem, sort of that shadow IT, like fix it yourself. Don't bother your boss about it. Just go in and figure out, how to make this work and get these invoices out. She shut off multi-factor authentication, forgot about it. Months later, they experience a breach and they get denied a claim on their insurance, and it was in the millions. And they get denied a claim because one account had MFA turned off. And, using a tool, you need two things. You need a tool, you need a manager, right? So using a tool like Augmentt with the leverage of a proactive MSP to manage the cyber risk for a small business and the cybersecurity and even the IT support and help desk if you want to, but having all of those layers of protection where you can't turn off MFA. And if you can't turn off MFA, you still can't solve your problem. So the solution is not to go in and fiddle around with things yourself. The solution is call a help desk and get a real solution. The solution is to get a good, viable, and secure solution. And, Augmentt has been a major part of a lot of our operations as far as that goes, making sure that we know. I mean, it's a single pane of glass. It's an easy thing to look at. They're secure here, they're not secure here, and you have your directives to go forward and get them secure. Another point, you said a lot about Microsoft, and, the way that Microsoft goes is the way that a lot of SaaS applications go. QuickBooks Online, Google even, they all kind of trend in this certain direction. And when you look at that shared responsibility model between what your SaaS application is responsible for and what the customer who's using it is responsible for, in the terms and conditions for the Microsoft 365 platform. So when you sign up for an account, you have your emails hosted on Microsoft 365. Microsoft tells its users straight out that if your account gets hacked and it's used for evil somewhere, right? It's used for something illegal or causes damage to Microsoft or causes damage to anybody else, Microsoft will sue you. And people who are in the small business field who sign up for Microsoft and, do these things, they think, well, all of my data is in the cloud, or I'm safe because we don't have any information on our computers. Everything's stored on Microsoft and SharePoint, on OneDrive, my email, wherever it might be. And they assume that this is safe. Well, if you don't have multi-factor authentication and you've got a terrible password, Microsoft will let you screw your business up, right? They will allow you to do that. And if you don't have some knowledge or some understanding of how to prevent those things from being taken from your business, or if you're not doing the proper, executing your proper due diligence to make sure that you're protecting your business, then when you get breached, it is on you. And not only is that breach on you, but Microsoft will also sue you.
Right. And the thing, beyond Microsoft that is fascinating is, the Discover product that you folks use to go out and audit what applications are actually being used within a customer's environment. And the so what for the end customer, like for me, I'm a small business owner. I've had 8 businesses. I want to know what applications my employees, my team members are using, because generally speaking, if you're, say, a 40-person organization, you probably think you're using 20 applications. Well, when Derek's team come in and does an audit for you, you'll probably find that your team's using 80 to 120 different applications. And so the first thing is that, and those extra applications are what we call shadow IT. And so you have your approved applications and you think you know who's using those applications, but now you'll have complete visibility and you can see exactly what applications are being used, what employees are using those applications, and how much are they using those applications. So this allows you to see where you have duplicate applications where you have old apps that you thought you had deprecated 6 months, a year ago, but are still being used, or employees have downloaded applications to make their jobs a little easier, and they might be freemium applications. They may be paid for applications. And the point is that you'll end up finding all of this shadow IT, all of these non-approved applications, and maybe some of them should become approved because they're good for your business. But now at least IT has their arms around it, and finance has their arms around exactly who is using what applications. But you'll also find now, and to that point, a lot of those applications that people are using, they're putting your corporate data and your client's corporate data into those. And when the employee leaves, they leave with your end customer's data. That's not compliant in any way, shape, or form. So this is a really interesting one. And actually combining the MFA conversation with the SaaS monitoring and reporting, if you have cybersecurity insurance, Mr. End Customer, and you want to look, and your premiums are going up significantly, if you're being monitored by Derek's team with the Augmentt platform, you're actually eligible for up to a 40% discount on your cybersecurity insurance, because the insurance companies understand that if you're monitoring and reporting on what's happening, then you're able to secure that. And so your risks go down that much that the insurance company's actually prepared to give you up to a 40% discount. So that's kind of a big deal. The other part of SaaS monitoring and reporting is that you can see where you have duplicate applications or unused licenses. You may have, for example, a bunch of Adobe licenses, 10 Adobe licenses, but you only have 6 people using it. And you can see how much they're using it. So maybe you can save some money on your licensing. You may have 20 licenses of Salesforce, but you can see that only 15 people are using it, and 2 of those people only log in once a month. Well, guess what? You can save a whole bunch of money based on optimizing your licenses. So there's a security, a compliance, and a cost optimization and license management component to this that is critical, because small and medium-sized enterprises and small and medium-sized businesses now spend more on software than they do on devices and networks. So your IT, the biggest part of your IT is actually the application layer. So, and that's where all the data is going, and that's where all the bad actors are going to get the data, is in the cloud layer. So having that secured and compliant is critical, because the bad guys are coming after 50% of the breaches happen with small businesses. So it's not just all big business.
So one of the a couple things you mentioned, a couple things you hit on there. The license redundancy with applications like Salesforce. There's the cost savings when you can eliminate all those licenses. But something else to consider is, we always look at what is the minimum amount of access that an employee actually needs to ensure that they can do their job, right? So when Sally comes into work and sits down at her desk, we want to give her the minimum amount of access to her network, her files, applications, things like that, because when Sally's credentials get stolen, or when Sally falls victim to a phishing email, or when she accidentally logs into a phishing portal and somebody gets her credentials, we want them to be limited in their access to their system. So if Sally has a license and a login for Salesforce and she's not using it, get rid of it, because it's just another point of entry.
Absolutely. Understand unused licenses it's funny. It's one of those things people don't think about other than from a cost perspective, but it is a major security door.
And it's the same thing with, redundant software. So we have companies that we manage. We come in and they're a Microsoft house, and everything's on Office 365. They're using Teams. They're using Outlook. Their Outlook calendars. they're Microsoft integrated. Some of them are even using, dynamic CRM on the Microsoft 365, right? And then everybody has Zoom. And they've got a professional Zoom account that they're paying for every month. I'm like, why are you using Zoom? You have Teams. And some of them don't realize that Teams can do the same thing Zoom does. Is Teams better than Zoom? No. Is Zoom better than Teams? No. They pretty much do the same thing. But if you already have an integrated solution for it, why have this other thing that you're paying for that's this other set of credentials that could get breached at some point? Like, cut it out. You don't have to have it. Don't have it. Again, minimum level of tools, like your minimum level of access and keeping those licensing costs down and vulnerability points down.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the point is, again, pre-pandemic, there were not the tools to be able to monitor, secure, and manage the application layer like this. Now there are. And so now it's the opportunity for small and medium-sized business and smart managed service providers like you folks to go out there and help the customer easily and quickly get their house secure, and then continue to monitor and report and manage all of those applications.
I think something else that's important that doesn't get talked about a lot about SaaS management and SaaS monitoring is the applications that we're able to monitor because of tools like Augmentt, especially Augmentt. But being able to walk into, say, a staffing agency with 50 employees, and when a manager knows I've got my top producers, I've got my bottom producers, and I can see who's doing what on my network now. So when you have a segment of your employee base who are on the low producer side, and you have your quarterly business review with your MSP, and they come in and you get laid out in front of you on a sheet of paper what applications your employees are spending their time on, it's often the case that lines up directly with who your top producers and your bottom producers are. And the people in the middle are always kind of scattered. But, if I see somebody who's on Facebook all day, that's going to bring up some concerns. But you also have to put it in context. Okay. If this person's in the accounting department, they're supposed to be processing, billing or payments or something like that. There's not much of a reason for that person to be on Facebook. Right? But in the context of staffing and recruiting, there is a reason for them to be on Facebook, because they could be doing research on the person that they're going to be interviewing for a position, right? Like checking for, some red flags or just doing some research. Everybody knows that employers go out and research new hires on social media, right? So it only makes sense that a staffing or recruiting agency would do the same thing, right? So keeping that in context and understanding, that data shouldn't be making decisions. Data should be given to the decision maker to put that in context and then make decisions off of that. But that decision maker needs that data. That employee behavior analysis is a really important thing for me. And it's something that I've had a lot of questions asked, especially after the fact. Like, I didn't even know we could do this, right? Like, this explains a lot. Like, now I understand. I've got, these 20 employees. My top 5 are producing, 90% of our profit. And then my bottom 5 are basically doing 0. And then the middle 10 are producing 10% of my profit, right? But now I get it. They're on Instagram all day. So, and that's another huge part of this.
Right. Absolutely. And there's literally a productivity score in the application. So you can rank employees and the applications that they use, whether they're high security risk or productivity, et cetera. And you can modify that by employees. So to your point, the marketing department, okay, they should be on Instagram and Facebook. That's a high productivity tool for them. Great. We mark it as that. But for engineering, that's a low productivity tool. Absolutely. And then it makes it easy to see what employees are spending time during the working hours on high-low productivity tools. And
I see Augmentt as a multi-layered tool for, in the context of a small business owner. It's going to help prevent your business from being stolen out from under you. But it costs money to get these tools and to have these tools managed for you by a professional who knows how to use them, right? So your return on investment comes from cost management, making sure that you're not paying for extra things you don't need to be paying for. I'm not saying that we can walk in and find you enough money to save to pay for our services, but tools like these will help to keep your IT costs under control and predictable. And then the second part is making sure that you have a good handle on what your user productivity is, because most businesses, if not all, their largest expense is payroll. So make sure that the money that you're investing in your payroll is actually giving you that proper return on investment. So this is a major tool that can be used in that context. And, that's part of our quarterly business reviews, right? We want to sit down and discuss with you. So if you don't have a managed service provider who's providing you with those services, it's time to start looking for one. In 2023, things are changing too fast for a small business owner to be able to keep up with those changes. And beyond that, make sure that if you're working with with an MSP, that they're providing you with those tools and that data, that they're grabbing you by the arm and saying, hey, we need to sit down and talk at least once a quarter. We need to sit down and talk. We need to go over your security posture. We need to go over your user behavioral analysis. We need to go over all this stuff and make sure that I'm doing my job as your dedicated CTO, or in my case, dedicated CISO, to make sure that everything is where it should be and that you as a decision maker are getting the information and the data that you need in a sort of an anecdotal context, and work with somebody who understands your business to help you move it forward. So what would you sum up your message to a small business owner today as, Gavin?
Well, so the facts are that 80% of security policies and postures are not properly set up in customers' environments. So the probability that unless you're working with a company like Derek's, you are probably not secure. And you should insist that get Derek's team in, do an audit for your business. This is not a complicated thing. And they can show you exactly all the threats, all the risks that are happening, who they're happening against within your organization, how strong or weak your security policies and your posture is, and what areas need to be improved, as well as doing an audit on all of your SaaS application license usage within your organization. So you can clearly see exactly what apps are being used, who's using those applications, and then you can manage that with your partner appropriately. So this is really straightforward stuff, but the reality is 80% of businesses are not properly secured or managed, and they need a smart MSP like Derek's team to come in and do those audits, show you what the baseline is, and then work from there to improve it.
And yes, you're right. It has to start with an audit. You have to know what your posture is as a small business. You need to know what your coverage needs to be for an insurance policy. So you need to understand what kind of damage you're going to take if you fall victim to a breach. You need to know what you need to do to eliminate unnecessary risk. And you need to make sure that you have either an insurance policy or money set aside to make sure that you can roll out a proper breach response. And then you need to be working with a partner who has the proper tools, who's investing the money on their end into those proper tools to make sure that they're managing your risk with you properly, and working with a team like Gavin. And also he's got a cohort named Derek Belair who spells his name wrong, but we won't hold that against him. But working with a team like Augmentt, and if you have a managed service provider helping you with your IT, great. Tell them about Augmentt. Make sure that they're using it. If you don't have an IT provider, get one. That's the best information, the best recommendation I can give for a small business in 2023. You need somebody here to help you get through this. So, Gavin, thank you so much for joining us today, sir.
Derek, it was absolutely my pleasure. Invite me back anytime. I'm happy.
Awesome. Thank you. And tell Derek we said hello. Thank you.
Okay, I will do.